Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporters Sal Capaccio and film room guru Erik Turner deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Erik's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape, presented by Thin Man Brewery. I'm your host, Erik Turner, and as always, joined by my man, Sal Capaccio from WGR. Sal, welcome back onto the show, and man, what a scene that game was against the Bengals.
It was amazing. It was great. Kind of had to take one for the team here, though. I'm a little bit under the weather after all of that, a little bit of sniffles, but that's okay. We deal with that. And so I got my little bit of chicken broth in here. Okay?
Oh, there you go.
As we do this, and I have to tell you, I got this cup, Erik, from the Big East tournament of 2009 when Syracuse played UConn in the 6 overtime basketball game. Okay,
looks like it. Wow,
this was I know it was a media cup, and it was blue,
cool.
And then it would turn white when you would put something hot in it, and the logos would come out. Now it's all white. The blue's gone completely because it's been so long. But look at those Big East logos, baby! Like, come on,
incredible! What a time! Yeah, what a time that was! Wow, Big East, love it.
That's great.
Good stuff.
Hey, I mean, Notre Dame was even in the Big East at the time.
I know. It's crazy.
Now they're whining about that. Now they're taking their ball and going home and not going to a bowl game.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, great matchups and memories back then in the Big East. And, the Bills and Bengals made some great memories at Highmark Stadium.
Yes,
a 39-34 win by the Bills over the Bengals. We're recapping that today in this episode of Turf to Tape, and set the stage, man, because I'm sure as someone that was down on the sideline covering this game live and in person, is probably one of those core memories that you're always going to remember when, just not just on how the game unfolded, but just the scene there at Highmark Stadium.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, the picturesque, view of the snow globe, if you will, right? The snow just falling down. And, we live in an era now of these incredible cameras and shots and footage and all this social media and the slow motion, the cinematic views. And we already got some of those, unfortunately, and I lost for the Bills that looked very similar a few years ago. It really did remind me of that game. It reminded me so much of the snow falling. Even the uniform colors were basically the same. And they really can bring out the technology they can really bring out, that complete view. So, the game itself, though, the crowd inside the stadium and, one of the last games ever inside this stadium, there's only a few more. Maybe there's going to be playoffs. We don't know. But to have those two quarterbacks go at it and battle throughout the game like that was just awesome. Some of the memorable plays. I've seen a lot of great games in that stadium, both as a professional and personally. And that's right up there with one of the best.
I can only imagine. It was a great matchup that, obviously the Bills pulled out. But I thought that it was a good game when you're talking about testing the mental toughness, not because of just the elements, but the back and forth nature of this game. Obviously Burrow and Allen kind of going at it. And I thought in this game, the mental toughness and fortitude of this team shined. You got to realize there's a lot of guys on this roster that are no-name type guys, like McDermott talked about, not first-round guys that have had to earn their way on the roster, earn their way in the NFL. A lot of people talk about how the Bills lack talent, but they know how to build a team, right? They know how to build a team. They know how to have a winning culture and sustain that success. And I thought that really showed out in this game, especially if you're talking late in the game when the Bills were down, multiple possessions, and they still obviously had that mental toughness to come back and obviously swing things in their direction on both sides of the ball, offense and defense.
I know I always get accused of being like a coach defender, and whether that's, Sean McDermott or anybody, but especially McDermott. And I know you get some of the same things. We try to bring you their perspective a lot of times, right? We just try to bring you their perspective, and there's certainly a lot of things to criticize. And I understand that people are down on some of the coaching this year, but could I make the case that they've done a really good job over the last few weeks because of all the injuries and piecing things together. I mean, players matter. Players matter. Yes. And, they don't have the players they thought they would have. And they've had a lot of injuries. And on the defensive side, they're kind of putting it together right now with duct tape and scheme. It's all about scheme. Right. I thought about this yesterday. When we were listening to Sean talk in his press conference and Bobby talk in his press conference, and those guys talking about, look, I mean, the NFL waits for nobody. And you have to put a plan together. And if you lose a guy, you can't go whine about it. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. Every team's got those issues. And my thought on that was, that's right. I guarantee the message from Sean McDermott over the last few weeks defensively to his staff is, hey, it's on us. We better come up with something with the players we have. Like, we don't just throw in the towel here. We got to come up with something. And the game didn't start off well. I didn't love the game plan to start off, but this is kind of what the Bills do. They kind of want to see what you're doing first, and they'll go into a game with a bit of a, I'm not going to say vanilla type of game plan, but they want to feel you out a little bit. And then as the game went on, as we've seen, they made adjustments, and they made great adjustments, and they started to get up on the receivers. They started to pressure a little bit. That's how you get the result of those big plays.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't call it vanilla. I think they want to see your punches. They want to see your cards, and then they make their adjustments. And I'm glad you made the point of, the players started making plays. And in that type of environment with the snow and the footing and all that, it really comes down to execution or lack thereof. And really, the scheming it can only go so far because of the environment that they're playing in. And in this game on offense, the Bills knew going in they were going to attack with the tight ends. And McDermott talked about it in his presser yesterday, I believe, about how during the week their analytics department had targeted the second level and third level of the Bengals defense and how they consistently give up production to tight ends. And so the Bills went into this game with that as part of the game plan, and we saw it.
Yes.
Knox led the team in team target percentage at 25.9%. Kincaid, 18.5%. Hawes only got 3.7, but he got in the end zone towards the end of the game. The tight ends, there's a lot of talk about the Bills' lack of weapons outside, but maybe we should start talking about how they have such a good tight end room and how, given the time of year and the identity of the offense with James Cook and running the ball, that maybe they're maximizing their tight ends, and they should maybe even more so going into the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. I know even on some of the Cover One channels and WGR and Always Game Day in Buffalo, we got a guy that we like to go to with the Bengals, Joe Goodberry. He does a really good job covering the team. Yes. And Joe really pointed out how terrible the Bengals have been at covering tight ends when he was on with Matt Bove and me earlier this week. It was such an incredible stat. He said that the Bengals had given up. They were the worst team against tight ends in yards allowed. The next closest team was 250 yards better than them. Like, that's how bad they were. So going into this game, you knew, and we talked about it, the Bills needed to use their tight ends. And getting Dalton Kincaid back was going to be a big deal. Well, lo and behold, how many of us thought Dawson Knox was going to be the big focal point going into the game? And, with Dalton Kincaid hampered a little bit, they don't want to put a ton on his plate. They don't want him on the field blocking a ton right now with the knee and the hamstring. But he was still used. He was very effective. This was a Dawson Knox game. And the very first play of the game should have told everybody what they needed to know. Play action, over the middle, Dawson Knox, 32 yards. Bam. The first play of the game, once they did that, Erik, I'm like, that they're doing exactly what they should do. Joe Brady had the right game plan. You attack the middle of the field. You attack with the tight ends. They did it perfectly. It was great execution, on point, all game long. And then Kincaid gets involved as well. I like what they did with Kincaid. They put him on. They gave him a couple screens. He's able to navigate. He's able to get to the perimeter a little bit. So he's not. He doesn't have to use and put a lot on his body going to throw over the middle of the field a lot. He was on the perimeter a little bit, right? So I like that. Getting him right there. I think that's underrated, how you have to think about these things and how he's being used. And then, of course, Jackson Hawes, he's out there to block, but he can turn around. He can catch a pass. He did it. 11 catches, 137 yards for the Bills tight ends in this game. I mean, that's a really nice number.
Yeah.
The Bills did a good job. You'd always love to see the Bills receivers have more production than what they had. But this is not a game to complain about that because the game plan wasn't to have that happen.
No doubt. And I love that you mentioned play action because play action, as you said, that first down play action especially was huge in this game, setting the tone on that first, play to Dawson Knox, 32 or 34-yard gain. Bills ran play action 47.2%. They were 10 for 13 for 135 yards and a touchdown. And I liked it in this game plan, obviously because of what the Bengals' issues are on defense, but the footing of the offensive lineman, defensive lineman, running that play action allows the offensive line to get their hands on those pass rushers. Don't allow them to tee up and just run full throttle at Josh. And not only that, a lot of those plays that they were running were kind of that downhill action that was getting the linebackers up into the line of scrimmage and opening up the intermediate and deeper areas, allowing guys like Dawson Knox to, pitch in and run after catch. And then, like you said, Kincaid, his usage, high leverage situations, third down screens, the RPO screen that, hit off a couple of times in this game, 15 and 20 yards. obviously in the low red zone, in the red zone. They were very selective on when he was used. Obviously very important when we're talking his health going forward. So yeah, I thought it was a great game plan when you're marrying the run game and what they put on film this year, some of the tendencies of being an early down run team and flipping them on their head by running those play action plays, and just the concepts. From what I've been told, the Bills have worked a lot over the last month of trying to marry the successful run concepts with their play action concepts so that it gels a lot more and looks more cohesive, and it's more difficult to defend when you're talking disguising it.
Yeah, always remember, folks, offensive football is systematic, right? That's what it is. It's not, we used to have a saying, and you see one of the books behind me is probably the wing tee, the Delaware wing tee. Here's a ring.
Oh, yeah.
Delaware wing tee, baby. All right. Look, I'm a wing tee guy. I always joke about it. I mean, I'm no face mask, throwback leather helmet guy, right? Seriously. But the reason I bring this up is Delaware wing tee is very systematic football. Everything counters off something else. You have certain rules that you always follow. And if you do those time after time after time again, the defense, they get used to this. They get used to this. They get used to this. And then you hit them with something else. And if you can play it right off of what you're doing, making everything look the same, that's what you're saying. That's what the Bills do. This is systematic. Yes. And when I used to coach the wing tee, we would hear other schools and other teams say, well, oh yeah, we run the wing tee. And I'd watch them. I go, no, they don't. They run a few plays here and there. They don't run the system, right? And it's just grab bag. The Bills don't run grab bag. What the Bills do is they set you up. And great examples last week against Pittsburgh. They're running that same play over and over and over and over again. After a while, you see it, then you can run a counter off that. You can do something that looks a little bit like it. You can run the same variation. Toss sweep against the Carolina Panthers. Same thing happened. I asked Aaron Cromer about it after that game. I said, Coach, I've never seen a team run toss sweep so much in my life in one game. Was it the same play? He said, kind of, but you're running a couple different formations. Yes. Maybe you're pulling a different guy here or there because you're giving them the same look, but you got to vary it up a little bit. So anyway, I bring this up because you're right. The Bills are running a systematic approach to their offense right now and marrying their run concepts with what they're trying to do in the passing game as well, I think has really paid off for them. And then the footing part is really good. You're right. Greg Olsen brought it up earlier in the game, and he's right that when you are playing in the snow, the offensive player has an advantage. He knows where he's going. The defender has to figure it out, stop, and if you have to change direction, it hurts you. Misdirection is something a lot of teams try to do in the snow, but you got to have players that can keep their footing to do it.
And the Bills did a lot of those plays in high leverage situations when you're talking misdirection. One of the comments here from Joey Gons there says, I got to say that mesh play with both Cooks in the backfield was a cool design. Give Brady credit. He did that multiple times in this game where, especially on one of the Knox play action plays, that mesh play is what the Bills call it's mesh traffic or slither, according to Joe Brady in his scheme. And that offense is called the go-go offense. He basically, Josh is in the shotgun. He has Cooks next to him, and then you see James Cook aligned next to Brandon Cooks, and essentially they're trying to ID with the motion, what they're playing on defense, but then cross up and create that traffic for Cooks out of the backfield. If you guys remember, Cook scored on that type of play against the Dolphins in the past. It's called slither, but I agree. The eye candy was great in this game. That misdirection that you talked about was huge for the Bills offense, and it caught the Bengals in a lot of binds in this game when we're talking coverage and communication. And so, but without getting, you can't get the ball to those guys in those situations if you don't have good blocking up front. And I thought the Bills offensive line did a great job in run and pass protection in this game. So what were your thoughts on the Bills offensive line? Again, down Spencer Brown at right tackle.
Yeah, and I thought Ryan Vandermark had a couple of struggles here or there, but meaning Ryan Vandermark's not a starting 17-game right tackle for the Bills. Spencer Brown is, but he did a good job for the most part. He got beat a couple of different times. I'm actually going to give the Bengals a little bit of credit. They were better in the front four than I thought they would be going into the game. Their numbers have proven that over the last several games. Where they're weak is coverage at their linebacker spot, and they can get beat in the secondary if you give them time. Give Josh Allen time. He did, but a couple where Josh Allen obviously scrambling around, and they made him kind of get out of the pocket a little bit. I thought the offensive line overall did a good job to just continue to do what they do. There was something to be said in this game for just doing what you do and to keep doing what you do. The Bills were down 14-3. They were down 21-11. They were down 28-18 in the fourth quarter. But you know what? They just kept grinding. They kept doing what they do. They just kept punching back. And they kept playing. And eventually, when you do that, Erik, you're going to break a play. And that's what happened a couple of times on, of course, Josh Allen's run, even the throw to James Cook. There were a couple of different times that happened. Just keep playing the game. And that's what the Bills did by continuing to do what they do best.
And I want to talk about one play. You said the Josh Allen scramble. This is that play here.
Yeah.
And I want to break it down real quick with the broadcast footage, because if you guys remember the Panthers game, Deion Dawkins, he kicked out wide. That linebacker shot the gap and created a disruption. You saw it with the Bills backed up against the Buccaneers where Josh threw the interception. And it's what the offensive linemen call a dual read. So essentially, Deion Dawkins has to pick up either the linebacker or the edge player, the most dangerous threat. And he has struggled at times to do that. But in this game, with the Bengals up 28-18, Dawkins did not mess up on this play. And we see it right here. You see him initially kick out wide with this edge defender. But
can I just interject real quick? I don't know if you were going to bring this up or not, but I specifically asked Deion about this play after the game and the fact of what he did. And I want everybody to know what Deion said.
Yeah,
he gave all the credit to David Edwards, his guard. He said, without Dave communicating, I would not have done what I did there. Dave is so good. He called David Edwards the best communicator at guard that he's played with, basically.
He is.
And he said David is an elite communicator. So when you watch this play, know that David Edwards told Deion, hey, be aware. This is what you got. This is what I got. Yes. But also, Eric, one other point, this is why it's important to play at home. I don't know if you get that same communication on the road, to be quite honest with you.
I love that you mentioned Edwards. Huge fan of him. The most technically sound offensive lineman on the Bills. Secondly, he holds people accountable. All right. You remember the game where Deion Dawkins had 2 false start penalties and they were screaming at each other on the sideline. David Edwards was laying into Dawkins because he was jumping off sides and false start in that game. And so Edwards he's a guy I do think the Bills have to bring back, but that's another discussion for another day. But
he won a Super Bowl with the Rams, by the way.
Yeah. And on this play, he did alert Deion Dawkins, but initially Dawkins kicks out wide with that edge rusher, but he notices that inside backer, again, most dangerous threat. He comes inside for Josh. And what does Dawkins do late? He picks him off, blows him up into the line of scrimmage, into that pack. And that allows Josh to step up, break this arm tackle by the edge defender, and make a house call. So very good stuff from the Bills offensive lineman, Deion Dawkins, and kudos to also David Edwards on that play, because that was a pivotal play, obviously, with the Bills down 10 points under 8 minutes in the fourth quarter for the Bills.
Let's rewind it and go through a couple things and explain a couple things to people and why we do this show, a little bit of education, what Erik means by most immediate threat. So pass blocking goes from inside out. Pass blocking goes A gap to B gap to C gap. If you are a back, for example, mostly a back, and you're in for protection, first thing you look at is you're looking at A gap right in front of you. There's nobody there, you go B gap, then C gap. So Deion Dawkins is kicked out, but he sees somebody inside him. Now you could have a call where everybody's sliding, but in this particular case, he's going to go to the most immediate threat. So that's the more interior, more inside gap, which is why you see him go that way. Okay, that leaves 52, as you see him right outside Deion right now. What happens is when the other team brings one more guy, the quarterback is responsible for the free blitzer. Right. So now the quarterback, in this case Josh Allen, has to make a decision what he wants to do with that guy. He can throw the ball, he can pump fake it, or he can do what he does is run here. So you have to remember the quarterback is part of pass protection. The quarterback is responsible for one. That's right. He's got to be accountable for that. I liken it to a 2-on-1 in hockey. Yes. If you know hockey at all, 2-on-1, the defenseman, he's the one guy back, and they always say he takes passer. I'm saying he takes shooter, and goalie takes passer. So basically, he makes sure that the goalie can see everything the whole way, and he just cuts off. And don't give him a second option, basically. And that's what it is here, where Josh Allen is responsible for that guy coming. I see him. I have to do something with him.
Right. And it does start, with setting the protection. And this is the protection the Bills ran. And Dawkins, again, he's got a dual read inside out on this play. And again, maybe he's set incorrectly to start, but you see Deion Dawkins step up and just wipe that guy out. And again, Josh now has to just be one guy. And you can see there's a lot of real estate in front of Josh, and he does not miss on this play. He's able to run it in for the touchdown, a big play in this game. And like I said,
what do we love down the field here? This is Brandon Cooks. Look at
Brandon
this.
Cooks.
Brandon
Cooks.
You just got
running the guy off and then blocking him for the touchdown for Josh. Just awesome stuff. And I bring this up because, we talk about the adjustments that are being made in, when it comes to half to half or drive to drive. But this has been an issue that not only the offensive line, but Josh Allen has even screwed up a few times in these type of protections where he said it. He even said it in this game. He set the protection wrong on that 3rd down and long late in the game, but he overcame it by beating that guy up into the gap. And so it's nice to see those adjustments being made. It's nice to see, obviously, Deion Dawkins learn from some of the mistakes that he had early in the year. And again, the offense adjusting as the game went on.
And Deion said he made a couple mistakes in the game. He said, but, without David communicating him there, maybe he makes that mistake. I also found what I found about that play when you, real quick, looking at the back angle on the back angle, too, if you could pull it up. So it looks like they did have some sort of protection to slide right. Everybody washed down to the right. And that left Deion alone, and he had to choose. And again, let's go back to passer and shooter, right? Deion's choosing passer and shooter. So Deion took, in this case, the shooter. Josh took the passer, and Josh said, I'm going to take it. And if you watch from the back angle, you can see, watch the wall that's formed to the right as everybody's kind of turned. Here we go. Watch bam, right there. Look at that. Everybody to the right of Josh. That's a wall being formed to the right. So it's a 2-on-1. It's a 2-on-1. Deion says, I'm taking the passer. Josh, you have the shooter, and Josh takes it to the house.
Yeah, just
Love
awesome
it.
stuff from the Bills offensive linemen and offense overall. So speaking of Josh Allen, again, the quarterbacks don't play each other, but it does seem like Josh really elevates his game when he is going against those marquee quarterbacks. So talk about what that felt like, seeing that in that stadium, because as good as Josh Allen played, Joe Burrow also had a very good game until the defense of the Bills really stepped up late in that game. But Burrow was dealing in this game as well, not just Josh.
Burrow was pretty incredible as well. In fact, speaking of our buddy Joe Goodberry, he had a post earlier today. It was great about how Joe Burrow has actually been also incredible playing against the Chiefs and Mahomes and the Bills and Allen and Lamar and the Ravens. In fact, he said in his career, Joe Burrow has had, I'm going to get this stat. This is crazy. And I'll get to Josh in a minute. Since 2021, Joe Burrow, 18 games, including playoffs against Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens, 5,300 yards, 43 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions, 67.7% of his passes, 7.7 yards per attempt, 105 passer rating. That's pretty incredible. And then Josh Allen on the flip side, again, against teams like the regular season and even playoffs, right? He's one of the greatest playoff quarterbacks ever. Unfortunately, games haven't ended with Josh Allen walking off the field victorious 100%. Because there's been other things that have happened in the game, but he's been great. And watching him deal in this game, I think the underrated part about Josh in this game, Erik, was his efficiency. We focus on the big plays that he made. He made great big plays. He made the 4th down throw. He made another 4th down throw. He made a 4th down run. He had a touchdown run, the 40-yard run. I get it. But he also completed 79% of his passes on 28 attempts in the snow. I mean, he was super efficient in this game. And watching him, people say, put the cape on, be Superman. Yeah. Look, I mean, when you have a guy like that, why wouldn't you? Do you think that do you think the Bulls didn't want Michael Jordan to do it? You think the Lakers didn't want Kobe Bryant to do it? Think the Oilers didn't want Wayne Gretzky to do it? When you have the best player in the sport, that's what you do. That's the difference sometimes between winning and losing.
And that's why Josh Allen was our tapped-in player of the game, presented by Thin Man Brewery. 22 for 28, 251 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 rushes for 78 yards and a touchdown. I thought in this game, as you talked about, the efficiency, he let the scheme work for him. He let the game come to him until it didn't. When those 3rd and 4th downs happened, whether it was in the field or in the low red zone, and he needed to make a play, he needed to put that cape on, he did. And, there were plays in this game in those high leverage situations, whether it's the 40-yard scramble, there's a 3rd and long scramble, of course. The 4th down touchdown to Shakir was one of his most ridiculous throws ever. But don't forget about the dime to Kincaid in the low red zone for the touchdown. The screen passes that were just perfectly placed to get explosive plays on 3rd downs to Kincaid. And then one throw that's not really talked about is the back shoulder to Shavers on that drive where they needed those chunk plays to get down there quickly to score. He was just on point when he needed to be. Again, played within the scheme, within the flow of the game when needed. But then when he needed to put that cape on, he sure as hell did. And you saw it in those situations that made you think. I'm sure when you're on the sideline watching this game, you're like, this is special. And I love watching this guy play.
Yeah, I mean, you just saw the 2-point conversion throw. He had a couple options there. He did a nice job there. I would even say, how about the 2 slants he threw? Now, one to Gabe didn't result in a touchdown in the first drive.
The run
and then the one to Keon Coleman that got him towards the goal line. I think that's one they fumbled on, actually. But I mean, those were important throws and big plays in the game that he had to put on point. I'm always afraid of those slants at the goal line. If you mess up at all, remember Jalen Ramsey took one off Keon last year?
Right off Keon, yeah.
Right? I mean,
similar situation too. That was like 3rd and 3 or something like that. Yeah.
If there's anything that's off about those throws, it bounces, it goes up in the air. That's a very dangerous play. You got to be on point. You got to be able to make them. And, Joe Brady has confidence in Josh, and Josh has confidence to put that ball where he's supposed to.
Yeah, just good stuff. And that's why Josh Allen was our tapped-in player of the game, presented by Thin Man Brewery. And if you guys haven't heard, Thin Man Brewery and Pils Mafia is bringing Mafia Light, which hits different with just 3.5% ABV and only 80 calories per 12-ounce can. Drinks like water with notes of beer. It's the first craft Pilsner of its kind, brewed and packaged right in Western New York. A true game changer for local beer lovers. We appreciate them sponsoring this segment every single week, and we appreciate letting us obviously talk about Josh Allen week in and week out when it comes to tapped in player of the games. I'm sure this won't be the last time that Josh ends up on this list. But as far as the offense goes, Sal, any other arrow up, down guys that you wanna throw in there or mention?
Yeah, I think arrow up on the offense, the entire tight end group we talked about here. I think James Cook. Listen, James Cook was not like this overly incredible game for him running the ball, but when you put together what he did, catching the ball as well, made a great play out of the backfield to get down the field. That was a big deal. So James Cook as well. He did fumble though into the end zone. He had another fumble a little bit earlier, which was kind of really weird, and kind of how all that went down. Trying to remember. I'm going to try and go back to my notes here just so I make sure I have everything and what I did, because there were a couple things that I think. Okay, how about Matt Prater? 5 for 5 on kicking the ball in the snow. I think that's a big deal. And then, I think we have to give an arrow up overall to Sean McDermott's aggressiveness, Erik. I mean, this is a game that going in, it clearly was Sean McDermott, or maybe he adjusted when it was 14-3, but he said, I'm going to have to go for everything I can here. I cannot leave points on the table today. We just can't. And the Bills didn't punt, and they had to stay aggressive all game. They knew they were up against it. And you could say, well, that's because his defense stunk. You could say that all you want, because the first 3 drives they did. But I give him credit for, I thought he was even almost reckless at times going for it when he did, but he did it because he thought he had to, and it worked out for him.
Right. And like I talked about the analytics to it, he had an idea, a plan in place. He mentioned Dennis Locke in the analytics department, and how they had certain thresholds and ideas coming into this game, and those situations arose and they went for it. I think he only mentioned one time really being like a gut check, a trust your gut type of moment. But his defense, they made some really good adjustments. But as we said, Joe Burrow still had a really good game. The Bengals offense were 10 for 12 on 3rd down. That was the big coaching point and area that the Bills continue to struggle on, especially if you're talking 3rd downs. The average 3rd down for the Bengals was 3rd and 7.1. So 3rd and long, and the Bills were surrendering big plays. And I thought the Bengals and Joe Burrow did a great job of finding the proper matchup, whether it's, Gesicki, the big tight end, versus Cam Lewis, or Taron Johnson with some really nice, throws from Burrow, obviously, or later in the game when Benford had done a great job of shutting down Chase. You saw them put Chase into the slot a little more to get him matched up with either Taron Johnson or Cam Lewis in those high leverage situations. I thought the 3rd down struggles on defense still crept up in this game, and it's something that they have to continuously work on week in and week out going into the playoffs.
Agreed. And a big talking point coming out of this game, and I gave an arrow down to both Lewis and Taron Johnson, but I want to put it in perspective. It's not an excuse at all, but let's, again, give credit to the Bengals, their coaching staff, and Joe Burrow, because they saw a matchup when the Bills were in dime with Cam Lewis and said, he's the smallest guy on the field. We're putting a big guy out there, and he's not going to be able to cover him. And that was the case. And I don't know what the answer to that is right now, to be honest with you. Maybe if you're more comfortable with it, maybe Jordan Hancock becomes a little bit more on the field. But, man, here's the problem, folks, all right? Someone said to me, well, why don't they then just put Max Harrison, let him play in the slot for Taron, or let him play dime safety or something like that? Here's the issue, all right? I mean, Taron Johnson told us last year that it took him 3 years to learn this defense from that position.
Yeah.
You can't just put a player there and think, oh, everything's fixed because he's bigger or he's more athletic. Cam Lewis is a good player for the Bills. He has been a good player. He will be a good player. It was a terrible matchup for him. And sure, in a vacuum, in a game, maybe you could have made an adjustment. I wouldn't doubt that. But it's not as simple as just putting somebody in for him, because that person's going to make a mistake and it's going to go for a touchdown, because it is not easy to know all the nuances of what they're trying to do at the nickel with Taron or at the dime with Cam Lewis in those situations. So, yeah, I mean, maybe an adjustment could have been something like put Jordan Poyer more in the box and have Cam go back to play safety, right? Remember Jordan his last year in Buffalo, Jordan played more of a dime safety role.
Backer, yeah.
Right? Like maybe that's something you can look at. I think you're going to have to learn from this game. And if you go into a game against a team that has that type of personnel, you have these great receivers, you have these big tight ends, you might have to say somebody else has to play that role, not Cam Lewis. In all other games, you're fine with Cam Lewis doing it. Maybe it's just specifically, this was a tough matchup.
Yeah, and maybe it's schematically, maybe instead of, kind of Bills play a lot of cover 2 man, and cover 2 man, you have in your corners, your outside corners, and your nickels kind of take away underneath, right? And force the passes to go out to the boundaries, especially from the slot. Maybe you start funneling those plays to the middle of the field and having a Jordan Poyer drop down or a Hancock drop down, or maybe a Darnell Savage, who is a very good spy robber player, so that it funnels plays to the middle. So even if they complete some of those quick passes, they're brought down quickly or they're hit. And that sets a tone where they don't want to throw those over the middle. So maybe there's some more funneling with leverage and funneling to leverage to the middle field that maybe they could do. But you're right. It was a bad matchup when you're talking, Gesicki versus the nickels, or even T. Higgins. I mean, you got to tip the cap to some of the passes from Burrow to Higgins, because those were just indefensible, honestly, because they are that special together.
Yeah, and obviously not a tip of the cap to the people who allowed him to keep playing after what happened. I was one of the closest people on the planet to T. Higgins when his head hit the sidelines the first time. It was loud. And everybody near me, Erik, went, oh man, he hit. And I just kept watching him, like, is he getting up? And he did. You're like, oh, he's going to get up. And then he just
didn't he point to his head too?
He pointed to his head. He goes, head, like, yep, hit my head. He just came out of protocol. So right away, you're like, okay, this guy's probably not going to come back in the game. Walks off the field with trainers and then comes back in the game. Then it happens again later. And he came back in the game. It was wild. Now he's in protocol again, by the way. He did go back into protocol. So anyway, here's the other thing. That play I just referenced on the sidelines, he hit his head. I couldn't believe he caught it. The ball was coming to me. I was going to catch it on the sideline, seriously. And he went up and caught that ball, and how he caught it. He was out of bounds when he caught it.
Yeah, and you saw in this game, the Bills did a good job of using Christian Benford, one of the players of the game, no doubt, and shadowing once again. Last week it was Metcalf on the Steelers. This week you saw them use Benford in a similar way, but it allowed, again, much like we talked last week, for Benford to be aggressive at the line of scrimmage, get his hands on Chase when Chase was on the boundary. And in this game, Benford finished with 1 solo tackle, 1 sack, a pick 6. He allowed 0 receptions on 3 targets over the 35 coverage snaps, allowed 0 catches on 2 targets in 16 matchups against Jamar Chase. Very good game from him again. Talk about Benford and the streak that he's had as a boundary corner, as a guy that is learning to be a boundary corner. McDermott talked about that. He's doing some different things than the first few years in this scheme.
Yeah, you're right. He talked about being a field corner, right? And if you can explain that.
He was a field corner, yeah.
He was, right, that he was a field corner. Meaning that he plays on a certain side of the field, basically, at certain times. And now he's, on the boundary. And basically, so now this is a guy they trust in all areas of the field, all situations against the other team's top wideout. We were just talking beforehand. I asked you, and Colin, our producer, does a great job. I said, what are these splits of Stephon Diggs in the slot and out wide? They're about 50-50, 230, 234. So I wonder what they're going to do next week, because that's the one way you get him away from him, is put him in the slot, because that's not his role. And you have Taron Johnson, and we'll see what the Bills do. But to watch Christian Benford's evolution has been pretty amazing. This guy works hard, tirelessly. Yeah. He was dealing with a bit of an injury, a couple of them early in the year. He's healthy now. And the athletic play he made to intercept the ball on Joe Burrow and get up to go and run it back after that. Jamar Chase chasing him, pretty amazing.
And that's something I talked about on social media, is that the Bills typically run those corner blitzes where they had the corner come off the edge, the DN and D tackle to that side slant into the interior gaps. And honestly, it's a call that's used on first and second downs to stop run plays. It's for the run game and basically gapping out in this scheme to shut down the run game. Well, the last 2 weeks, the Steelers and Bengals game, it's actually worked in their favor on pass plays. If you remember the Steelers game, Bosa was the one that created the fumble on Rodgers, but it was Benford who, once again, was on a corner blitz, and that put him in and around the ball to scoop and score on that play. This week, Benford on a corner blitz got a sack on Joe Burrow, blindside hit on him. I honestly was surprised that Burrow, one, didn't see it coming, and two, didn't fumble it on this play. And then late in the game, the athletic play by Benford and ball skills to obviously time the jump when he admitted he's not even supposed to do that technique-wise, jumps and jumps the ball and intercepts it and then breaks a tackle and makes a house call. Just incredible discipline, technique, skills, and just week in and week out, he has progressed this year into that new role as a boundary corner, which if we're talking the difference between both of them, think about this, guys. Say the offense is in a 3-by-1 set, 3 receivers on one side, 1 to the other. Usually offensive coordinators put those 3 eligibles to the field side. And so on defense, you're putting your corner out there with a nickel and a linebacker most of the time or a safety over the top, and you're allowing them to play off a little more. But on the backside is usually where the boundary corner plays, where you're playing against those X's, those guys on the line of scrimmage that can run the full route tree, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. And even T and Chase kind of do it as well.
You're more on an island out there.
You're more on an island over there. And those receivers are usually the most talented. They can run the full route tree. They can get you short. They can get you deep. And so you're seeing a lot more talented players as a boundary corner in those situations. And as McDermott talked about, Benford started as that field corner, a lot of off coverage, a lot of zone, a lot of bail technique, but now he's progressed with his technique. And there's a reason why they refer to CB as Mr. Detail Oriented, because he's a technician. He works on his craft, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor come forward for CB on that defensive side of the ball.
We'll find out tomorrow if he wins back-to-back AFC Defensive Players of the Week. Player of the Week. So yeah. He has a claim to it, maybe. Not only did he have the pick six, he also had the team's only sack in the game, by the way,
right,
of Joe Burrow. So yeah, and that was pretty big. So I think that came towards the end of the half when the Bengals were trying to score again, and the Bills, held them from not getting any points. Also, as a side note, speaking of interceptions, AJ Epenesa. I'm going to give you a stat, folks. This is one that you're going to be able to go to the bar tonight.
Yeah.
Go to your friends, your family, and say, you know what? You're going to win a little trivia contest with them. All right. Here's the question. Who, since the merger, 1970, the AFL-NFL merger, who is the all-time Buffalo Bills defensive lineman leader in interceptions? And the answer, AJ Epenesa with 4. The guy has more interceptions for any Bills defensive lineman who's ever played since the merger. Now, there's a guy named Ron McDowell who had 6, but all of his came in the AFL before the merger. So McDowell had 6, AJ Epenesa had 4, has 4. So he has more interceptions than any defensive lineman in Bills history since the merger, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's it. And honestly, those interceptions, looking back at each one, he's earned those. Like this one, okay, Jordan Phillips put his big paw up and batted the ball, and he tracked the ball and intercepted. But there were times where like the Commanders or Redskins game where he drops into coverage, the quarterbacks running out and scrambling, and then decides to try to throw it up and over him, and he just picks it off. Like the stuff he does, whether it's batting passes at the line of scrimmage or dropping out underneath on some of those like simulated and creeper pressures, I think it goes unnoticed a lot. So it's good to see that, that work that he's done in those areas and those things, talking to players, they say he makes those plays in practice too. This is not something new that he does in these games. He does this in practice a bunch. It's good to see that him get some recognition and some historical recognition when we're talking the Bills franchise.
You always point this out on Twitter, and I love it. You always say every drill has a purpose, right?
Sure.
And one of the drills the Bills do a lot of is get their hands up. Now, I know all teams do this, but in the locker room, asking AJ Epenesa about the interception, he specifically pointed to the fact that Jordan Phillips was doing that all week. He said, we knew Burrow wanted to get the ball out of his hands quick, so we have to get our hands up quickly, right? He said, so Jordan had been doing that all week, and guess what? Gets his hand up, hits the ball, goes into the hands of AJ Epenesa. Every drill has a purpose.
No doubt about it. And so with that said, defensive side of the ball, to wrap things up, any arrow up, down guys that you want to point out aside from Epenesa, obviously, and CB?
Yeah, and I did already, mention the two corners, and I think it was just a circumstance of kind of the size matchup that the Bengals attached, which I thought, was obviously something that they did a good job of.
Yeah.
Didn't see Greg Rousseau do enough in this game. You just need more from him if you're not going to have Joey Bosa. We'll find out this week if Bosa is going to play. McDermott yesterday did tell us, he said that there is he said, I believe so, when asked if there's a chance he could play on Sunday, but we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, you don't know. We don't know. Good news, by the way, that Cole Bishop, the only name that went out of the game with any sort of injury, it wasn't an injury, it was cramps. He was cramping. Yeah. So, excuse me, he should be fine. So I think you need more of a pass rush. It was tough. They were doing a little bit of quick game, but you got to get a little bit more from the pass rush, especially if you're not going to have Joey Bosa in this game. So we'll see exactly, what happens there.
One guy that I just have to call out, one, because I love watching linebackers, but one, because he stood out the last few weeks with Terrell Bernard down. Shaq Thompson, once again, I thought had a very good game. He brings that physical element, as we talked about against the Steelers. He played downhill, he played sideline to sideline, and he was just running through guys when it came to runs up the middle, runs on the perimeter, or jet sweeps or jet action on the perimeter to chase. He did a great job in this game, and he's done a good job of just, again, playing off of the guys in front of him, but minimizing the gains from opposing rushing games. And it's something the Bills are going to need, one, with the weather and how teams are going to start attacking or continue to attack them, but also with the weather changing and the playoffs coming, teams know the weaknesses of the Bills defense. It has been the run game. And so seeing him kind of, stick his helmet in there and set the tone in that department physically is good to see going forward.
Yeah, we've talked before, and we highlighted it last week. The Bills are going to have to make some sort of decision at some point with Terrell Bernard when he's healthy. Yeah. McDermott also said that he's improving this week. Terrell Bernard's improving. Joey Bosa's improving. Joshua Palmer's improving. We'll see where they are this week. But at this point, I don't know how you could take Shaq Thompson off the field. The thing that I've been impressed with Shaq Thompson, Erik, to be honest, is I've been saying, well, he's not really a sideline to sideline guy. He's been going sideline to sideline, though. He does a good job. He scrapes really well. He understands angles. He understands what the other team's trying to do. That's film study. He's not at this point of his career the best, most athletic linebacker that you're going to find. He's a really good athlete, though. He's a first-round pick for a reason. And let's remember, in Sean McDermott's system, he played multiple spots. He could play all three linebacker spots. He played big nickel. This was in Carolina. So he's a very athletic guy. He's an older guy now, but, man, he is going sideline to sideline. He's scraping down the line really well. He's doing a really nice job there. And I'll say another guy who scraped down the line well a few times in this game was Big Deion Walker. I thought Deion Walker did a nice job to get down the line to make a couple of stops in this game as well.
Yeah, he finished with 4 tackles on 25 defensive snaps. I agree, especially early in the game, kind of setting that tone, working down the line of scrimmage and blowing up the run play there. So good stuff. It was an awesome game. Obviously, there were moments where, as a fan, I'm like, this is over. This is over. But myself hung in there, much like a lot of the fans in the fourth quarter, as Josh referenced in his post-game presser, and they were rewarded. A big win for the Bills in this game against the Bengals. And, they have another big matchup coming this week. So quick thoughts on the upcoming game with the Patriots. You kind of alluded to, I think, something that is going to be the talking point this week with Stephon Diggs.
Clearly in their first matchup, the Patriots said, we're going to Stephon Diggs. I think Diggs wanted that. He was fired up, no doubt about it. And he's an alpha, right? We talk about that. And this guy wanted, he's super competitive, and credit to him. He had a great game, and Drake May was incredible, and he has been all year. This guy's a stud, no doubt about it. The Bills gave them the game, though, by giving them the ball a few times, and the Patriots still took them to the last drive to kick a field goal. Bills can't give them the game. The Patriots are going to want to do what Sean McDermott said last time, muck it up. They're going to want to muck it up. They're going to want to play a game where it's going to be where you make mistakes. We're going to capitalize on your mistakes. The Bills can't do that in this game. I think a really, really big key in this game, folks, and we're going to talk about this going forward, the Patriots do not have Milton Williams. They have not had him for a couple of games. He is a really great run defender. Since he has gone out of the lineup, their rushing yards allowed, their EPA yards on the ground is not nearly as good as it was with him in the lineup. This is a game where I think the Bills need to run the ball with James Cook, and I think Jackson Hawes and Reggie Gilliam play a big role in this game on the road.
I love that matchup and that talking point, because I think Mike Vrabel and that defensive scheme and in structure, they are really sound structurally when it comes to run fits. And I think they will look to obviously make the Bills one-dimensional, shut down the run game. They did a great job in fitting up a lot of the runs the last matchup. And so with no Williams, how does that, look in this game from a run game standpoint? And I think we talked about it after the game, the Patriots game. Vrabel does a good job of kind of confusing and taxing Josh when it comes to, hey, who's coming? Maybe there's 3 or 4 coming, but which 4 are coming and who's the spy? They're very good at creating those hybrid type players that can spy Josh and make him think, oh, he's rushing. Actually, no, he's dropping out underneath and he's spying Josh. And so I love this matchup from when we're talking the Bills offense versus the Patriots defense, on top of, like you said, what the Bills are going to do with Diggs and limiting what he does, because it's been pretty apparent that the Bills over the course of this season actually have done a really good job against bona fide number one wide receivers for the most part. But when they move guys around, when it's boundary to the slot, what are the Bills going to do with guys like Diggs this week in the Patriots game?
Yeah. And by the way, I'll give you another really interesting stat that I was thinking about today. So I went and looked it up just to make sure that what I thought was right. The Patriots are really throwing the ball downfield a lot, right? They are. They're hitting explosive plays. They actually are like top 3, I believe, if I remember right, looking at in fact, them and the Bills, believe it or not, are tied for second most 20-plus yard plays downfield. Now, a lot of the Bills are yards after catch.
Right.
A lot of the Patriots are thrown over the top. The Bills are the number 1 team in the league at not allowing explosives, though. They have one play of 40 yards or more through the air, and that actually went for exactly 40. So might be a bit of a let's see if the Patriots can get a couple down the field and if the Bills can stop them from doing it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great matchup, as we said. Obviously, a divisional matchup against the Patriots. With that said, let everyone know what's going on as far as content this week. Pressers, we're recording this the 9th on Tuesday. Let us know what's going on down at One Bills Drive.
All right, so the Bills they're pretty much in this routine, so everybody knows, where Wednesday becomes a walkthrough day. They're not going to really practice Wednesday and Thursday like they did for most of the year. Wednesday becomes a walkthrough, Thursday becomes a regular practice. And since all their games are on Sundays now from here to the end of the year, you can probably expect that. That's what they started last week. So on Wednesday this week, we'll have a walkthrough. So that means media isn't allowed to watch. We don't watch walkthroughs, but we do hear from Sean McDermott before the walkthrough, and we do get an injury update, which is an estimated injury update on if it were a full regular practice. So I'll have all that for you at Sal Sports. Of course, Matt Bove and I will have It's Always Game Day in Buffalo as well. So Sean McDermott tomorrow, walk through practice, and then Thursday, a bigger regular practice.
And we appreciate everyone joining us live on YouTube. And if you watch it later, we appreciate that as well. Also know that we do have this available in all podcast audio platforms and formats as well. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, we're there as well. So you can search Turf to Tape and find us there. We appreciate Colin Ritchie behind the scenes, getting the stats and everything lined up for this show. On behalf of Turf to Tape, I am Erik Turner. That's Sal Capaccio. We'll see you next week.